Hello, my name is Steve Luxton. I'm a builder in Port Angeles, Washington. I'm from this area. I was born here. I went to Sequim High School, and I kind of got interested in this back in 2015. I was working at sea. I was a ship's officer by training, and I was able to buy a really small house in Port Angeles, but it was on a big lot. A lot of these old mill houses here in town, they've got a 400 or 500 square foot house on a 10,000 square foot lot. That was pretty common, and it still is. So there was a lot of potential for infill development at these sites, but at the time, there wasn't any legal pathway to do that. So I was going to sea, and in between one of the times I was back on the beach, I talked to my neighbor, and my neighbor had been on the planning commission. He said, well, we've just come up with this new thing. It's called an ADU. And I said, what is that? He said, well, it's an accessory dwelling unit. And he said, it's a mother-in-law cottage, just a fancy name for it. So I said, well, that seems like it would be a pretty good start. Like, I kind of was interested in doing something with this land. And so I went down to the city, and they said, well, yeah, you can build that. And you'll need to go through a conditional use process and, write letters to your neighbors and get their permission to build this kind of project. So I said, okay. And that's kind of how I got started. And so back in 2018, I built an ADU over on 10th Street. And that ADU was kind of the beginning of the construction industry for me. Even this thing that we're sitting here today has the same floor plan as that original ADU. It's just 2 units side by side. So kind of slowly, as Port Angeles has gone through this process over the last 10 years of opening up more opportunities for density and infill, I've kind of grown along with that. When they said ADUs were allowed, I did ADUs, and when they said, okay, you can build a duplex, I built a duplex. As soon as something came online, I've been the first person to do it in this community on multiple fronts. So, and it's been wonderful. I've to take this town 10 years ago, we're bounded by the mountains and the ocean, and we've got geographic barriers on both sides. We got a lot of wonderful public land here that we're not seeking to build housing on, so we didn't have many options here other than to increase density. And ultimately that took a situation where we had no real building sites left in the town other than just a few key large sites that would have taken a really major investment to do anything with. And we've got a situation now where there's room all over town. I think when they allowed ADUs, that doubled the density that could be done in town. When they said duplexes, that tripled it. When they said 4 units on a parcel, that quadrupled it. So we've just had this proliferation, this Cambrian explosion of opportunity here, where you can drive down the street and say, oh, okay, I could build a house in the backyard here, subdivide it, build a duplex, an ADU, any combination of things. And so things like that, to have these really broad swaths of saying, this can be done anywhere in town. 4 units can be done almost everywhere in town. The multifamily tax incentive everywhere in town. These grants, it's really opened up this development in a totally new way that has empowered people like me, small-time people, homeowners. It's people building ADUs that are accountants during the day. There's people putting in cabinets during the day, and then they go home and build a duplex. So we've got a really wide and almost egalitarian way that this has happened, where it's really empowered homeowners, small-time people all over the community to participate in this, not just big companies or CoStar or whomever are doing a lot of developments in the state along the I-5 corridor. So it's really been a wonderful change in this community. I mean, this community, half the people in this town say that it's been going downhill for 50 years, and half the people say that it's the best place they've ever lived. So we've got a really kind of complicated past here in a lot of ways, because this city was entirely dependent on resource extraction and the logging industry. And we've had 20,000 people living in this town for 40 years, very low growth here. So we haven't seen much happen, and we're finally starting to see this type of housing come online. And we've been able to do that because this has actually been able to get a really broad-based appeal from a lot of different people in town. We've had the Coast Guard, we've had different mills in town, we've had groups that represent tourism, groups that represent restaurants, we've had environmentalists, and they've all weighed in and supported this. So we've got a really big tent program here in Port Angeles to allow these types of things. And a lot of times people come up to me and say, can my son or daughter live in this thing? And in this project in particular, this is a multifamily tax exempt project with a guaranteed apartment at affordable rates. On my last project, which was very similar to this, we were actually able to provide all 4 apartments at the affordable rate. So it's been transformational for me as a small business owner. It's been transformational for our city. A lot of our businesses were having trouble finding people, especially during the tourist season, because there's no housing available. So, I'm excited about the future here. I wouldn't be in Port Angeles if it wasn't for these changes that have occurred over the last 10 years and the vision of people like Ben and Shannon and others, Lindsay, Kate Dexter, people in the past that have been instrumental in this change.